Climate change is one of those challenges that feels, well, just massive. So complex. But what if we had a tool that could help us see the problem a little more clearly, help us find smarter solutions? Well, let's dive right into this explainer because we're going to talk about a powerful technology that's helping us map out a much more sustainable future.
I want you to just look at this number for a second. 250,000. Right now, it's just a big, kind of abstract figure, right? But it's not abstract at all. It represents a pretty grim reality.
That's what we're talking about. The World Health Organization estimates an extra 250,000 people could be dying every single year from things like malnutrition, malaria, and heat stress, all made worse by our changing climate. So yeah, this isn't just an environmental thing. It's a huge public health crisis.
So let's start by connecting the dots. How exactly does a warming planet go from being a headline in the news to having a real, tangible effect on our health?
Well, this table makes that connection terrifyingly clear. We're not talking about something distant here. We're talking about severe weather that leads to injuries and serious mental health impacts. We're talking about extreme heat causing heart failure. And look at that last one. Changes in vector ecology. That's a fancy way of saying that disease-carrying critters like mosquitoes and ticks are on the move. So diseases like dengue and Lyme are showing up in totally new places. The threat is personal and it's already here.
And that brings us to the big question, right? The scale of this thing is just immense. How do you even begin to fight a problem that's both global and hyperlocal at the same time? Where do you even start?
Well, it turns out part of the answer isn't some brand new policy. It's actually a whole new way of seeing the problem through a completely different kind of map.
And this is it, a Geographic Information System, or GIS. Now, don't let the technical name throw you. Think of it less like complicated software and more like digital tracing paper. It lets you layer all kinds of different information onto a map. You can take data on, say, population density, then layer on income levels, and then layer on average temperatures. It puts it all together, tied to a specific location, so you can see hidden patterns in the world around us. And this is just a glimpse of how powerful these smart maps really are. They're not static pictures. They're living, breathing tools. They can track how a coastline is changing over years, pull in real-time data from satellites, pinpoint exactly which communities are most at risk from a flood, and even model what our cities might look like 30 years from now. It's all about turning raw data into something much more valuable: foresight. And this ability to connect all these different pieces of the puzzle is what makes GIS so critical. So let's take a look at how it's being put into action across a few really important fields. You can really see how this plays out in the real world. For disaster response teams, it means they know where to send first responders before a hurricane even hits. For city planners, it means they can see the best places to build parks that can soak up stormwater. It gives all these different experts a common language, a visual language, to solve problems together. Okay. To see what this really looks like on the ground, let's zoom in on one amazing example from Los Angeles. They're using GIS not just to fight heat, but to fight for something bigger: climate justice. This quote, it gets to the heart of a really critical issue. See, climate change doesn't hit everyone equally. And as researcher Susan Kemp points out, if we ignore the history, the social, political, and economic stuff, we completely miss the real reasons why some communities are so much more vulnerable than others. And here's a perfect example from LA. In a lot of low-income neighborhoods, you'll find way fewer trees, which means dangerously higher temperatures. And this often isn't a coincidence. It's a direct result of historical redlining, a discriminatory practice where banks literally drew red lines on maps around these neighborhoods and refused to give them loans or investment. Meanwhile, in wealthier neighborhoods, you see the exact opposite. More investment meant more parks, more trees. It's a pattern created by history, and it has life or death consequences during a heat wave. So how do you start to fix a problem like that? This is where GIS becomes a tool for justice. Researchers in LA came up with this simple, brilliant three-step plan. First, they used GIS to map out the routes kids were most likely to walk to school. Simple enough.
second, they overlaid that map with data showing where the trees were and, more importantly, where they weren't. And boom, suddenly they could see the exact stretches of sidewalk where hundreds of kids were walking every day in the blazing sun. The final step was to use that data to figure out where planting new trees would have the biggest impact.
And this is the beautiful results. It's not a guessing game anymore. It's a data-driven plan for targeted, effective action. This map literally tells city planners, hey, if you plant a tree right here, you're going to provide shade for the maximum number of vulnerable kids. It's just such an elegant solution to a really complex problem, and it's all made possible by layering the right info.
That LA case study is really a perfect little snapshot of a much bigger idea. Using data to make our fight against climate change smarter, faster, and a whole lot more fair.
And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. GIS isn't just about making cool maps. It's about making smarter decisions. It cuts through all the noise and complexity to give us clear visual evidence that can guide real-world policy and investment. It helps us turn overwhelming problems into manageable, actionable tasks.
So let's just recap why this is such a game changer. It gives us spatial analysis. It helps us understand the where of a problem. It lets us integrate all kinds of different data to get that full picture. It gives us clear evidence to back up our decisions. And maybe most importantly, it communicates these super complex issues in a way that just about anyone, from a scientist to a city council member to a concerned resident, can understand at a glance. So we'll end with this thought. That project in LA is about way more than just trees. It's proof that there's a new way of solving problems. It shows us that when you have the right tools and the right data, you can move from just reacting to climate change to proactively and equitably designing a better, safer world. So it really makes you wonder, if data can show us exactly where to plant a tree, what other problems can it help us solve?